Good morning. It is Wednesday, January 9th, 2019. This is our regular City Commission meeting. Let's start with roll call, please.
Mayor Skidmore.
Present.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Present.
Commissioner Kaler.
Present.
Commissioner Wygand.
Present.
Commissioner Crowley.
Present.
Okay, I want to welcome everybody here. Got a full gallery this morning. We got seats in the front if you want to. It's kind of like church and auctions. The front row seats are always available, right? But if you're okay there, okay, not a problem. We'll get started here. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation. I'm it, okay. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And our invocator is not here today, so let's bow for a prayer, okay? Father in heaven, we give you thanks for this beautiful day we can experience here in our city. We give you thanks for the many, many blessings that we're able to receive because of your love and mercy for us. We just ask for your direction and guidance through this meeting and all that we do and vote for, and may you be honored and glorified. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Okay, we'll start. We have the minutes from the December 17th study session, December 19th regular meeting. Everybody had a chance to review those, or the consent agenda. Do we have a motion for that, please?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Going to item number 8, public comments. Do we have any? No comments. We'll go to 9. At this time, I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication they've had that might influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially. We're good there. Move on to item number 10.
Proclamation recognizing Kansas Day.
Kansas Day on January 29th marks the 158th anniversary of Kansas becoming a state. Reading 9 stat will accept the proclamation. It will be read by Commissioner Kaler.
And the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas January 29, 2019 marks the 158th anniversary of the state of Kansas becoming a state. And whereas the land that would become Kansas came to be a part of the United States with the acquisition of the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. And whereas Kansas entered the United States as a free state during the presidency of Abraham Lincoln in 1861. And whereas the state seal contains the state motto, ad astra per aspera, a Latin phrase which means to the stars through difficulty. This motto, adopted in 1861, refers not only to the pioneering spirit of the early settlers, but also to the difficult times Kansas went through before becoming a state. John James Ingalls, a powerful voice in early Kansas history, suggested the motto as an expression of the aspiration of Kansas to reach the unattainable. Its dream is the realization of the impossible. Now, therefore, the governing body of the City of Ottawa, Kansas, does hereby recognize January 29, 2019 as Kansas Day, and reminds all citizens to celebrate the rich and powerful heritage of Kansas and land of determination and strength. Signed this the 9th day of January 2019 by our Mayor, Mlk Skidmore. Mrs. Neinstead.
Rita. This official here. Very good. Go ahead, have a few words to say, and if you want to adjust the podium, you probably practiced that.
No, I did not
Okay,
practice.
all right, now that's all right.
I hope it's okay, because I don't.
Perfect. Just right.
Thank you for asking me to accept this. And this year, I thought, what could I talk about that relates to the history of Kansas that you don't already know? So I decided, in the last few years, I've been doing something, and my husband, I don't think, is aware of it. And it's on my bucket list to finish after retirement, maybe. But the Historical Markers program was administered by the state of Kansas through the Kansas Historical Society and the Kansas Department of Transportation. The first of these historical markers were erected in 1938, and more were added from 1940s through the 1960s. There is no current program to add new markers, though. Most of the markers that I'm talking about are located in roadside parks and rest areas so that travelers may conveniently safely stop and rest and view those. But they're the ones that are made out of the cast metal and have the distinctive sunflower design at the top. Now, when our 3 children were young and we were traveling, our 3 children could tell you that Richard would always pull off to see these and read them. They were sitting in the back seat pleading, "Don't stop at another one. We've already read this one." Well, I found them interesting also. And 4 years ago, when I started traveling across the state from east to west and north to south, I decided to make a point of stopping at many of those signs, and I had been taking pictures of them. But that made me wonder just how many there were. So I did a little research. Do any of you know how many of those historical markers there are in the state of Kansas? Any guesses? There's only 120. Quite a few. Now, there are none in Franklin County. I used to think there should be one at the rest area out here on I-35 about Silkville, but there's not, and it doesn't sound like there will be. But in Ness County, there's a sign, Homestead of the Genius. Now, probably none of you know who that genius is that they're referring to, and yet everyone knows his name. It's Washington Carver. George Washington Carver. When he was 22, he had graduated from high school in Minneapolis, Kansas, and moved to Ness County and homesteaded there and built a sod house. He lived there the 2 years that were required, and then he mortgaged his claim to go to college. At 32, with a master's degree, he went to Tuskegee Institute in Alabama on a salary of $1,500. Although Thomas Edison once offered him $100,000 a year, he remained in Alabama until his death in 1943. And this one I did kind of in honor of Mike and Blake. In Pawnee County, you will find a sign called Home of the Farm Credit. And this was 280 acres that was used for collateral for the nation's first federal land bank loan made on April 10th, 1917 to a farmer stockman named A.L. Stockwell. In those days, farmers and ranchers found credit hard to come by. If available, it was very expensive, as much as 10% per month. That was back then.
Sorry about that.
Recognizing the importance of agriculture, though, our nation's economy, Congress passed the Federal Farm Loan Act in 1916, which was signed by Woodrow Wilson. In Wilson County is a sign about the opening of the Mid-Continent oil field. And Kansas has long been known for its oil. Indians would hold campfire around oil and burn the springs of oil. Immigrants would skim the rock tar from such oil seeps to grease the axles of their wagons. But in Wilson County is the site of one of the most famous oil wells in the United States, Norman Number 1, first commercially successful well of the Mid-Continent field. It was drilled in 1892 by W.M. Mills of Pennsylvania, and within 22 days, at 832 feet, the hole began filling with oil. Mr. Miles plugged it, reporting a poor well, and began to drill another well. And then he hurried to Pittsburgh with samples. And these so galvanized operators, Guffey and Galley, that they leased 1 million acres. But in the next 2 years, they drilled over 100 wells and sold out to Standard Oil. Now, I just want you to look back on the history of Kansas in the upcoming days. As you see a historical marker in the future, take a few moments, stop and read it. At one point, as I said, I was taking pictures, but I don't have them organized, so I'm not sure how many I'm up to on that bucket list of 120. But I do encourage you to enjoy the history of Kansas. Thank you.
Good job, Rita. Thanks for that much for that information. I actually worked for the Federal Land Bank in Larned, so I'm familiar with that marker you're talking about. Mr. Stockwell finally paid that loan off about a year ago, I think, but at that rate of interest, I don't know. But anyway, that's a lot of history there, but thank you, Rita. That was very informative. We'll move on to item number 11.
Proclamation recognizing Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
Monday, January 21st is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Since 2002, the city of Ottawa has officially recognized Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a city holiday. Crystal Anderson, Assistant CEO of ECAN, will accept the proclamation and share with us some of the community events that celebrate the legacy of Dr. King, and this will be read by Commissioner Crowley.
And the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas on October 19, 1983, the U.S. Congress passed legislation making the third Monday of every January, beginning with 1986, the day America would honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with a national holiday. And whereas on January 16, 2002, the Ottawa City Commission made the King holiday an official city holiday, and whereas this is the first national holiday to honor an individual Black American, and whereas the King holiday affords all of us an opportunity to reflect upon the past while seeking hope, determination, and the opportunity to act upon the promise of the future. And now, therefore, the governing body of the City of Ottawa, Kansas, does hereby recognize Monday, January 21st, 2019, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and reminds all citizens to remember that the legacy of Dr. King lives in each of us, and we are responsible to promote, teach, and live the American dream. Signed this 9th day of January 2019, Michael B. Skidmore, Mayor.
Crystal. Crystal, you want to say a few words?
Morning. Thank you, Commissioners. So first, Richard apologizes that he couldn't be here in person to chat with you this morning, and I apologize that you're stuck with me. But Richard did have some information he wanted me to share with you all, and then I can entertain any questions you might have. So the Mlk Program is Sunday, January 20th. It'll be at 2 p.m. at the OMA. Richard will be recognizing 29 essay winners. This year's theme was what matters most to you that is going on in the country today in keeping with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s teaching, and how would you address it? So I'm sure some good ideas coming out of that. Mayor Skidmore will be there to present the Keep the Dream Alive Award to the best overall winners. We appreciate your time. Bethany Chapel and Westminster Men's Choir will be performing, and Dr. Reggies from OU will be our featured speaker that afternoon. COFO is going to be there broadcasting live, and of course the event is free and open to the public. So we really hope that folks can come and really absorb some good information, some uplifting entertainment, and really for us the most important part is the kiddos. So these youth have taken the time to put some thought into this topic and give us their ideas, so we really appreciate that. And I'd be remiss if I did not extend a thanks to the City of Ottawa and also Ottawa University. Both have been great partners to ECAN over the years, but specifically this morning in giving us your support for this program. We appreciate that.
Great, Crystal. Well, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? I just want to say, as mayor, it's one of the more difficult jobs to select from that essay contest. It'd be a lot easier if we had just one submission, but we usually have dozens. And so, but that's a tough job to do, and other mayors have been up here but know what I'm talking about. The kids do a great job in writing and great creativity. I'm glad to see you guys do that, so keep that up every year. That's great. So thank you very much, and we'll be there. Move on to item number, what do you have, 12? 13? 12.
Recognition and presentation of retirement plaque to Dana Stevenson.
And Jeff Olson's going to take the podium.
Morning, Mayor and Commissioner, and for the city itself. I've had the privilege to work for the city for some time, and listening to Ms. Nystad talk about history of the state, I'd like to give a perspective for a gentleman that's worked for the city for quite some time that we want to try to honor this morning. Dana Stevenson has worked for the city for almost 32 years. put that in perspective, if you look on the wall, there's 16 different commission settings that have happened. Take that and times it by 2. That is, he's worked within the utility department, worked within the warehouse. And the other perspective is, when he started working, City Hall was over on West 4th. When he started working, the internet was still a future technology that was still being worked on. It was in the process. So change has been happening over time. And Dana's not just for the city. He has been here his whole life, minus 1 or 2 years where he pursued a position outside, but he is part of this community. So in recognition of the fact that he's been here for so long, it's not just about him, it's also about his family. His family is part of this community. His family is part of this organization we call the City of Ottawa. So with that, some of the things we have talked about is change, technology, things have been changing over time. And with that, I'd like to have Dana come on up. In looking at different things he's been involved in, been with the most tremendous time in his life working for the city has been the ice storm of 2002. That was probably 5 days worth where the doors to the warehouse did not close. There was someone there 24 hours a day. Phone calls were made, equipment was being moved, materials are being procured, but it was not also just him. His wife volunteered to come in to answer the phone. That is what being a city employee is about. That's not just city employees, but that's also family. If you work for the city, your family has to accept the fact that you are going to be here. In that recognition, this is just, it's a heavy plaque, but it's just a momentum of exactly us saying thank you for what you have done, what part you have been. I'd also like to recognize his wife. I'd like to ask his wife to stand up to the, that she has been as part of that as he has. And like I said, it's my honor, it's my pleasure, and it's our thank you for everything that you all have done for us. If you'd like to take a minute.
She's been best friend and support through all of this. I want to thank the commission, the present administration, and 32 years of other people that I have worked with. It's been quite a ride. The evolution of the utility department and the city of Ottawa over these 30 years is something to be proud of. And I've played a small part in that, and I'm proud of that. My success has been all of these people sitting in the back room, because you can't run a utility department as one person. Our present leadership with Dennis in charge and Dave and Jeff, we've become even more of a team as a utility department, and that's something to be proud of, because nobody hollers quicker than the citizens of Ottawa if one of those utilities disappears. And I've been proud to help try to keep that going, and part of a lot of different major events through these years. I've worked with 87 people over 32 years just in the building that I am in, and countless others. There's only 2 people that was here when I came here that I can remember in the utilities department, and that'd be old Bill Ferguson and Layman Miller at the power plant. But it's been quite a ride, and I'm proud to serve Ottawa.
Very good.
I might go back in the grocery business and sell Miss Kayla candy again, too.
Actually, Dana, if you could stay up here for a minute, I just have a few remarks. I asked the mayor if I could just have a couple minutes. You have been a part of our family, not only my personal family, but our community's family for so many years. We appreciate your service. You're really the heart of our community. I know that you've known me my whole entire life. I know, right? We don't have to tell stories. Nobody asked them. But it would be a mistake on my part if I weren't to give you complete gratitude for the service that you've given to my family and to every citizen here in the city of Ottawa. So thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely, Dana. Very good. Anybody else? I'll just say, too, on behalf of the citizens of Ottawa, I apologize that we take these utilities for granted. We go to a switch, we turn it on, we don't expect anything but lights to come on, unless light bulbs burn out, but that's my fault. But for the utilities department, we just do want to thank you all for that. I've been to a country where they have rolling blackouts, and most of the people in this town have never heard or experienced rolling blackouts before, routine ones, I should say, and to realize what that means to have 100% going all the time. So, Dana, you and your department, in 32 years, that's amazing to think about one location, one spot, and one employer. In the banking business, that would be unheard of. But nonetheless, congratulations and successful retirement for you and your wife. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Move on to item number 13.
Request for approval of resolution to ban smoking at Legacy Square.
The above resolution amends Resolution 1765-18, which encourages citizens to voluntarily recognize tobacco-free zones in the City of Ottawa park areas where children are at play. And Mr. Cohen.
Honorable Commission, I appreciate you considering this resolution. We have the opportunity to make Legacy Square smoke-free and free of tobacco products right from the beginning. And if we do that, we're seeking a grant from a large insurance company that requires this. So this is the opportunity to not only help our funding for Legacy Square, but make it a healthy area. We know we're going to have families and kids there. There's going to be a child's play area eventually there. So this seems like a good time right from the beginning to enact this resolution. So I appreciate your consideration of that. And if you had any questions, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, John, this is part of the application. We don't know the amount nor when this grant would be.
It'll be soon, and the amount will be in the neighborhood of $25,000.
Okay, very good. Anybody have any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner.
I think I want to make a motion to approve the request for the resolution to ban smoking in Legacy Square.
Okay. Second. There was a second. Any other discussion on this? If not, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Wygand?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Mayor Skidmore?
I'll vote yes, too. The motion carries. Thank you, John, for all your work on that. Good. Item number 14.
Request for approval of quitclaim deed between Louis Stengel and Son Mortuary, Inc. and City of Ottawa for exchange of parking lot space.
The deeds will trade the city's 50 feet on the south end of parking lot G for Dingle and Son Mortuary's 50 feet on the north end of parking lot G. This will not disrupt any services, but allows Dingle and Son Mortuary easier access to line up for funerals in the parking lot while allowing the city to maintain the same amount of public parking space. And Mr. Hafley.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a simple land swap, if you will. Currently, the city owns all but the north 50 feet of this parking lot, but Dingles has been using that the south 50 feet for their services for many years. This last summer, we milled and overlaid our portion of that parking lot, and I was approached by Craig Dingle to see if we would be willing to trade the north and south 50 feet to allow him more control when he has funerals. I thought this was a good idea. We're not losing any parking spaces. Craig has assured us that outside of funerals, the parking lot would still be open to the public. There's, I guess I don't know. I lost my train of thought. Don't know what else to say. It's a simple swap.
Okay.
So we're asking for approval for this. So subject to your questions.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, Commissioner.
I move to approve the request to swap the land as described in item 14.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second. Any other discussion or questions? If not, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Wygand?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Skidmore?
And I vote yes, too. That motion carries. Thank you, Michael. I think it's a great arrangement we can have with one of our prominent citizens in town, so I think it's a good arrangement. Thanks for all your work on that, Michael.
You bet. Thank you.
All right. Item number 15.
Request for approval of ordinance amending truck routes within City of Ottawa.
Staff will outline changes recommended to update the ordinance. And Michael?
This truck route, myself, Adam Weingartner, and Wendy Lee were looking at the truck route ordinance, and we found some things that were basically outdated in the ordinance. Highway 59 and Highway 50 no longer run through the city, and it was mentioned in the ordinance that Highway 59 being Main Street at the time. So we thought we should update that. Eisenhower also from 13th South, I wanted to make sure I got that right, 13th South to the interstate was also not mentioned as a truck route. So we've just implemented these changes. One of the other things that we've done is removed Tecumseh and Locust Street. I want to make this real clear. I know we have Co-op up there on that end of town, on those two streets. We also have Builder's Choice. Removing that as a truck route will not preclude them from getting in and out of their properties or other businesses coming to them to make deliveries. You can still, according to the ordinance, you can still take the most direct route to a pickup and delivery spot. So, subject to your questions, we request approval of this ordinance.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on this?
So the farmers delivering grain, hauling anhydrous ammonia and fertilizer out, in and out, trucks doing all the things they've been doing, but the co-op, this does not impact negatively.
It does not impact negatively. All it simply says is that if you're a truck driver and you decide you want to go up and hit Wilson, you cannot get off of K68, go up Locust, where it turns into, go up Locust and hit Wilson Street. If you have no delivery there or no pickup there, you can't use that street.
And this is just a certain size of trucks. I know there's trash trucks that aren't affected by this.
Trash trucks are not affected by this because they're making pickups.
All right. Very good. Anybody have any other questions on this?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner?
I move that we approve the request amending the truck routes within the City of Ottawa.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion on that? If not, let's have roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Wygand?
Yes.
Mayor Skidmore?
And I vote yes, too. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Michael. We'll move on to item number 16.
Request for approval of small cell aesthetic standards ordinance and resolution.
Standards will apply to all small cell antenna applications for placement of new small cell antennas on city-owned and non-city-owned poles in the public right-of-way. And Mr. Finch.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, this is an item that came up for discussion on Monday. This is in the wake of some rulings by the FCC at the federal level on the location of small cell antennas. When we think of cellular service today, we think of the large towers that we see across the landscape, usually along major highways that allow us to go from one cell to another. As one drops off, another picks up the call, and we end up with continuous service. The next generation of wireless service is likely to be a series of small antennas that creates a wireless mesh in urban areas or in downtowns of cities. And the FCC ruling has left cities in a somewhat precarious spot. If you all don't regulate the aesthetic standards, that is how something looks, what type of antennas can be placed on poles, how tall can they be, how short can they be, what do they have to look like, what standards are there for using city infrastructure to locate private business equipment. And if you don't do that by January 14th of this year, you will forego the opportunity to do that in the future. So this ordinance will adopt a set of aesthetic standards that is based on some other cities throughout the country that have kind of taken the lead on developing these things, and a couple of cities here in Kansas as well. And then the resolution that I'll ask you to adopt separately will set the fee structure. So if a company comes to Ottawa and says, we want to make use of this public right-of-way that belongs to the citizens of Ottawa for operation of our private business, this is the fee that they will pay to the city for the privilege of locating there, and to cover the city's cost in processing that application and making sure that it meets the standards that you all are setting with the ordinance. So I hope that kind of covers what's going on, what we're asking you to do today. You can be flexible in the future. If you need to make a change, you can do that. If a company comes in and offers an incredible opportunity to the community or its citizens from the wireless standpoint, because you're doing this by ordinance and resolution, you can change them later. But if you don't have them as of that January 14th date, at least the way the law stands today, and it is under appeal, you will lose the opportunity to regulate in the future. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Okay, so we're looking at it be an ordinance be 16A, I guess, and a resolution be 16B, separately voted on, is what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Any questions?
I've got, will this, are there other communities that you are aware of going to adopt this kind of ordinance? I wouldn't want us to be set as a more difficult city to establish modern technology in and to join the rest of the world.
Yes. Many of the communities in Johnson County have an ordinance like this, actually more restrictive than this. Overland Park and several of the other cities. City of Wichita has one. Ours is modeled in part off the city of Ellis, which is not a large community. So we have a good mix of large and more urban communities and smaller, more rural communities throughout the state that are looking at this. I can tell you I'm part of a listserv for city attorneys across the state. This is on the minds of cities, like Derby and Ellis and others, people, attorneys trying to help their communities to get ahead of the FCC's ruling. And as I said, you have maximum flexibility this way. You can always change your standards later if somebody says, hey, this is precluding us from making this investment in your community. You can look at those standards and see what might need to be changed so you can accommodate if an opportunity presents itself.
Okay. And Ellis has similar charges, requirements of what we
Exactly the
about
same.
here. Okay.
And this resolution states that it's on city-owned or non-city-owned poles, but it could include additional poles, correct?
Right. So if
Okay.
somebody came in and wanted to start throwing up their own poles throughout the
Downtown?
downtown or along
Okay.
Main Street, you heard testimony on Monday that, some of the companies before have put a pole up, but then there's 5 or 6 transformer boxes right there in what many residents consider their front yard, but what is actually the city right-of-way. And so this just gives you an opportunity to say, if you're going to put something in, it's got to look good and match the community standard. And if you're going to utilize the right-of-way that belongs to the citizens, you have to pay a reasonable price to do that.
Which could be a possibility of us replacing street pole lights?
Yeah, a lot of-
downtown with aesthetically approved ones?
Right.
Okay.
The new technology a lot of times will integrate the antenna into a light pole. And some of those are very nice looking, and there's pictures in the aesthetic standards of ones that would be acceptable. And you really don't even notice the antenna part of the pole. It kind of blends into the design.
I've seen some of these, even like on palm trees now. It might look out of place for Ottawa, Kansas, but I know what you're talking about. They just look like a tree, and yep, always an option, who knows?
Yeah, this gives you the option, Mr. Mayor, if you want palm tree antennas, we
Okay,
can,
we
we
can
can
order
certainly
them.
talk about
All
that with
right.
the company willing to put them
I think it
in.
was part of the original pictures, but yes.
Yeah, I like that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah,
I'll
Commissioner.
make a motion to approve item 16 as stated on the agenda.
This would be 16A. It says
Yeah,
ordinance.
16A, sorry.
As the ordinance, okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second. Any other discussion? If not, let's roll call vote, please.
Okay. Commissioner Crowley,
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Wygand,
Yes.
Mayor Skidmore.
And I vote yes, too. That motion carries for the ordinance.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner,
I move to approve the resolution as described in item 16.
is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a second. Any other discussion on that one? If not, a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Kaler,
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley,
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Wygand,
Yes.
Mayor Skidmore.
And I vote yes, too. That motion carries. Very good. Thank you all. Item number 17.
Approval of city manager employment agreement.
City Attorney Blaine Finch will present the current employment agreement for the city manager for consideration and approval.
Good morning again, Mayor and Commissioners. It is my privilege this morning to bring the employment agreement for the city manager before you. Every year in the fall, late fall, we do an evaluation of the one employee you get to evaluate here at the city manager, who then handles the day-to-day operations of the community. Richard Neinstead has been the city manager here since 2007. And you all evaluated him in late 2018, and this today is the completion, the fulfillment of that evaluation, and the adoption of an employment agreement. The changes in this employment agreement from prior drafts would be to extend for an additional year, so now through October 15th of 2021, to change the severance provision in the event of a termination without cause. So if there's no other reason than you just want to make a change, that severance provision goes from 6 months to 9 months, which is fairly industry standard. In fact, probably maybe a bargain for the city and its taxpayers compared to what other contracts are these days. And then to allow more direction on the deferred compensation portion of the agreement. There is no increase in compensation in this agreement, but that is not a reflection on performance. You all have evaluated very highly Mr. Neinstead, and he appears to have your confidence and the confidence of the department heads who serve directly under him and the citizens of the community. And so it is an honor and privilege to stand before you and present this contract. And with that, I would stand for any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions anybody have? Looks like that.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner.
I move that we approve the city manager's employment agreement as stated.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a second. Any other discussion on this?
You know, I've got to say that I think we're justified in the retention and the extension of Richard's contract. It's good to work with him. It seems like the reports that we hear from the city employees that the city is are proud to be employees of the city, and they're working as a team. And so I would approve what we're about to vote on here.
Very good. Any other discussion on that? Not, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Wygand,
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler,
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley,
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen,
Yes.
Mayor Skidmore.
And I vote yes, too, and that motion carries. And let me just say this, too, that as mayor, one of the more difficult decisions I said before was to pick the winner for the Martin Luther King contest. But this is one of the easier decisions as mayor to approve this contract. So, Richard, we appreciate having you very on board. We thank you for your service. We hope it continues on, and we'll move on to your comments.
Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate your continued confidence in me. But the reason this community is successful isn't because of me. It's because of the great employees that we have. It is because of the great citizens that we have. And it's because of the outstanding elected leadership that we have. So, this is really about community, and my wife and I are humbled to be a part of that. So, and I do want to confirm that there are some things she does I have no idea. Thank you.
I think we're grateful for Rita, too, to keep Richard
I think very helpful.
just
Absolutely.
as close and in line as possible.
Thank you, Richard. We'll go to the report by the commissioners. Commissioner Wygand?
I have
Jorgensen?
Nothing today.
Sarah?
I am a bit disappointed that Rita wasn't here to announce that maybe we were putting up a historical marker for Richard Neinstead. I mean, you started it out with Home of the Genius, and I was just sure that's where you were going, that you had been hiding that from us for all this time. But no, all joking aside, it's an honor to serve with our city manager.
Absolutely. Commissioner Crowley?
I have none.
Nothing? I don't have anything to report myself either, but we do have our study session on Monday. I guess we've got a joint with the city, the county, and USD on the 16th, and then, of course, we'll be closed on Martin Luther King Day as well. So if there's nothing else to come...
Mayor, I have one
Yes.
thing I wanted to
Yes.
say, and I should have said it earlier. But I think Jeff Olson, his heartfelt remarks about the retiring employee, I think was very impressive and very obviously well-deserved, and that was just an excellent recapture of the value of Dana. And so I think we should recognize that. Great job.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. All right. But nothing else before the city commission meeting this morning. We are adjourned.
So you know where Dana started out. He spent 2 years in code.